Hello, welcome to Steven Shinder Reviews in video form, continuing Chucktober with day 22, this time covering Chucky Season 2, Episode 7, Goin to the Chapel. This one aired on November 16th, 2022, was directed by John Hyams, and written by Nick Ziegler and Amanda Blanchard. So, I've talked about Nick Ziegler before, but Amanda Blanchard, according to her IMDb page, was a staff writing assistant on all 8 episodes of season 1, but this is the first episode of this show she's written, and apparently was a staff writer on all 8 episodes of season 3, but uncredited on episodes 2, 3, and 4 of season 3, at least according to the IMDb page. And yeah, Chucky is pretty much all of her writing credits on there. And John Hyams has worked as a writer, director, and producer on various things. He definitely was a writer on One Dog Day, did screenplay and story of Universal Soldier: Day of Reckoning, uh, did an uncredited rewrite of Skin Trade, wrote 5 episodes of Z Nation, uh, creator of Black Summer, and wrote 16 episodes of that, and I guess also directed and produced on that, from what I remember just scrolling through this. Directed 4 episodes of NYPD Blue, directed Universal Soldier: Regeneration and Day of Reckoning, 9 episodes of Z Nation, there's that again. Chicago PD, 5 episodes of that, and a producer on some of the things I already mentioned, as well as a few or a couple other things. So definitely has a lot on his resume here, but this is the first Chucky episode that he's done, and well, I haven't looked far enough to see if he's done any others, but actually, okay, yeah, there are 2 others I guess come up in season 3. This episode, I feel, was, I was ready to go in disliking a huge chunk of this episode, but it ended up being more enjoyable than I perhaps as expected on this rewatch. It had been 2 years since the last time I watched this episode. It kind of feels like Doctor Who in that this is the season finale, and then after this we get kind of a holiday episode. The difference being that they are a week apart in the case of Chucky, and the holiday thing is technically the season finale. Like not just production wise, but in name. So this episode, the title card is made up of candles. The one in the previous episode was made up of the Colonel's heads, like bald Chucky heads, if I remember correctly. I honestly feel like the Army of Chucky's idea was squandered. It feels like it was so built up and then they didn't know what to do with it, which is kind of a shame because, uh, like all those, like a few decades of Don Mancini, since he first had that idea, and we never really get an army of Chuckies. It's barely even like a squad of Chuckies at most. So we're down to just one doll here. It's good Chucky, who had killed Nadine in the previous episode. And after killing her, he says, "Jake, what have I done?" And so you kind of wonder if he genuinely wants to be good and just had like a backslide, or if he's just messing with everyone. Throughout this episode, it feels more like he's messing with everyone and trying to fool everyone. Jake, by this point, does not give him the benefit of the doubt. Jake is furious at this point. There is a confession scene where he tells Father Bryce that everything is his fault. The death of his father and of Devon's mom, Gary, and Nadine. Conveniently, does not mention Lexi's dad or his aunt and uncle and cousin Junior, but whatever. So yeah, there are these confession scenes throughout the episode that are in black and white, except for anything that has a shade of red on it. So I do kind of like that. It goes back to that style of the Curse of Chucky flashbacks, which were in black and white, but still had the color of the sunflowers in that, and as well as the toy store, some of the colors there. But these confession scenes happen because the characters go through them in preparation for this exorcism. You know, Chucky and Nika at this point, you know, the Chucky who's been in Nika's head both want out of this situation of being tied to this one body. And so people who are on Chucky's side and people who are against Chucky, they're kind of working together here. You know, Dr. Mixter is fine with doing this exorcism if it means bringing Chucky Prime into the one remaining doll, because the rules of the lore at this point are that his soul can only go into identical vessels, and that would be the good guy dolls that he's part of. And for Tiffany, it would be the Belle doll, which, you know, that's kind of a thing in this episode as well. But Father Bryce tries calling the Vatican so that he can get permission to do this exorcism. You know, the plan is to send the soul of good Chucky to hell so that the doll gets emptied and the Chucky who's inside of Nika's head can be transferred into the doll. And then whatever happens after that is when the alliance ends, and it would be the fight all over again. So he calls the Vatican, but I guess they don't believe Father Bryce, like all the stuff that they're telling him, and he gets excommunicated. So he tells Sister Catherine, and I'm really glad that she did not die from the gunshot wound, that we're going rogue. You know, it's that whole funny thing. He tries to be like that sort of cool exorcist type character, I guess. So they make it a point to show the muscles as he's like changing outfits. It's really weird. Um, Jake and Devin, um, there's still tension, and Devin keeps wanting to put off talking with Jake until after they've taken care of all of this. But yeah, the whole Jake, Devin, and good Chucky thing really reminds me of like Frodo, Sam, and Gollum. Definitely in the movies where Frodo still believed Gollum more than his own best friend, which, yeah, I kind of have a staking point against that aspect of the films. But Jake is more to his senses here. Lexi kind of leaves herself out of this whole thing, goes to her room, and is really sad about Nadine's death, but then she gets visited by, I guess she hallucinates. I wasn't really clear on if she had taken the drugs and it made her hallucinate this, but sees Nadine in the form of a fairy godmother, I guess, but with clothing that has like the Catholic clergy aesthetic, and she's glowing blue, sort of. So I don't know, I guess like a force ghost. And she tells Lexi not to worry about her having died, which is really weird to me. Like, oh yeah, I died, but don't worry about it. You know, she tries to comfort Lexi, so that's the intention there. They have a nice talk, and yeah, I don't know if this really works for me completely, because uh, I'm just really upset that they killed off Nadine, like, especially the way that they did. So, um, oh, and I was also wondering about Trevor's body, like if that was a detail they forgot about, but apparently, you know, I had to like read up on this. Apparently, that was taken to the cabin where Dr. Mixter, the Colonel, and Andy were. So yeah, kind of weird that they just sort of stopped talking about Trevor altogether, and it's like not a big deal anymore. But then we get the long-awaited meeting between Andy and Nika. Because as they say, technically, they met when Nika was Chucky 5 years prior. Um, and Nika's like, yeah, that tracks. And Andy says, uh, Chucky killed my babysitter. That's 34 years ago. That's how this all started. And then Nika is like, Chucky tried killing me when I was in the womb. So it kind of felt like, I'm sure this was not the intention, but it kind of felt like Nika was trying to one up him and be like, you thought you were the origin? No, that was retconned, and now I am the origin, or whatever. And Kyle mentions that they're kind of like a Chucky support group now, like a Chucky survivors support group. So, kind of reminds me of the support group in Saw 7. Andy says he says to Kyle, "What did you do with your hair?" And she says, "Being blonde didn't suit me anymore." So I think looking back, that's what Nika Chucky or Chucky Prime was referring to when he said Kyle's not his type anymore, because she's not blonde anymore. I guess that's what he meant. And she says, "What about your hair? You look like Jesus." And I kind of wish that well, maybe wish is a strong word, but I'm kind of surprised that Andy looking like people's idea of Jesus with all the long hair and facial hair. I'm surprised that didn't come up with Sister Ruth being all about seeing the image of Jesus in different places, and this is why she sees Chucky as her Lord and Savior. I was kind of surprised there was no twist in this episode where she looks at Andy and realizes, no, you are the Savior, and that whole thing. But at the same time, it's, I guess, it's a joke that ran its course and became a plot point, which was really annoying. Sister Ruth's whole thing. She comes back later in the episode. But we also have Glenda. It is Glenda's the one who's here. Yeah, yeah. Uh, Chucky is, put somewhere safe with a Hannibal Lecter like mask over his face, even quotes the Silence of the Lambs. Glenda tries talking to him and he says, "You're a killer just like me." But Glenda keeps insisting that their father abandoned them, which is really confusing because wasn't it established, when Chucky first talked to Glenda in episode 4, that he wanted to be with his kids, but Tiffany kept them apart? Like, is that not the truth? Because Chucky tried staying. Like, if you look at Seed of Chucky, he wanted to be with the family. So I'm really confused about the sudden change in Glenda's view of what happened. But they do kind of play with expectations throughout about whether or not Glenda can be trusted. So I thought that aspect was interesting. So while all this is happening, Tiffany is on the run, still as Jennifer Tilly, goes to the diner to get some food, and on the TV screen there's a news report about Jennifer Tilly being wanted after the burning down of her house, which I kind of wonder, if she hadn't burned down the house, would she have gotten no attention at all? Like, would she have been driving around and not have to worry about being a wanted criminal? Like, there's such stupid little things like this in the Tiffany storyline. Someone recognizes her as Jennifer Tilly. She tries to be like, "Oh no, I get mistaken for her all the time," and does a terrible job of hiding her identity. And the person working at the diner wants to get a selfie with her, just not caring that she is a wanted murderess. So, like, if the guy got a picture with her knowing exactly who she is, wouldn't he get in trouble for not doing anything? Like, not trying to call the cops or something? Like, when she goes to the car, you would expect the people who recognize her would swarm the car, but she stays parked there for a little bit more and like just does not drive away like you would expect. And it's really odd. Like, nobody really does anything. It just felt like a little imperfection there in the story. Well, there's a lot of imperfections in this part of the story. So with her is Glenn, and Jennifer Tilly is in the Tiffany doll, the one with the stitches on the forehead, because, yeah. And uh, Tiffany verbalizes the plan of wanting to switch places with the doll again, and Jennifer is not into this idea now that she is considered a wanted criminal. It really feels like the emotion of what happened with Jennifer and her sister in the previous episode is gone. And a huge thing about this show is it kind of bothers me that we never hear whether Jennifer is still concerned or has given up on wanting the souls of her babies from Seed of Chucky back. Like, I don't know. I feel like there could have been something more compelling with Jennifer Tilly in this storyline, and they never really do anything meaningful with her. It feels like they brought her back when nobody wanted / expected her to come back. Definitely not in this way. And then they don't do enough with her, and then she's just off the board very quickly. So later in the episode, Glenn and Tiffany are parked somewhere at night, and Glenn sees that Jennifer is able to get out of her ropes. Glenn wants Jennifer to escape. It seems, Glenn being the good twin. So Jennifer, as the doll, escapes, runs out of the car, and tries crossing the road, but gets hit by a huge truck. So yeah, very lackluster fate for Jennifer. Again, they brought her back when nobody expected her, did very little meaningful things with her, and then just got rid of her in a way that I think was supposed to be funny, but doesn't feel very funny to me. It very much is like David's death in Bride of Chucky. So a callback like that, like that was a huge sticking point for me in Bride of Chucky, like I've mentioned before. It makes sense that the truck would keep driving since the doll wasn't very noticeable, but we do see the blood of the doll, on the road, and Tiffany feels helpless now that she doesn't have a Belle doll at the moment to switch places with. So, yeah, I'm very disappointed in the way that the Jennifer Tilly stuff was handled. And I was coming into this episode expecting that this would weigh it down heavily for me, but because these are very short segments within the episode and mainly focuses on the exorcism and all that stuff, it doesn't bog down the episode too much for me, thankfully. So during the exorcism, Chucky does a lot of taunting, even makes comments about Jake and Devin, like, comments about the bedroom and stuff like that. Very inappropriate, but maybe that's a point because Chucky is evil and they're trying to show that he takes things too far. But yeah, everyone is doing this chanting, and basically the type of chanting you'd expect from exorcisms, at least the ones in movies. And then at one point Chucky bites Father Bryce in the face. I was confused in this moment. I thought maybe he bit out Bryce's tongue, but he didn't, apparently. But the sight of the blood after the bite to the face makes Nika switch to Chucky. And so then Kyle ends up having to do a really hard punch in Nika's face to bring uh, Nika back in control. And they blindfold her so that they don't have to worry about her switching back to Chucky. So this exorcism continues, and we get. I feel like a lot happens in this. Like it's really intense. I do like the cinematography here. Um, so at some point, uh, the good, the Chucky doll ends up levitating. There's a lot of chaos that happens. The soul from the doll ends up inside of Father Bryce, and they battle for control. And Father Bryce tells Chucky to go to hell, and Chucky says, "You first, Father." And then his entire body explodes, a really bloody explosion, and there are like several different replays of it from different angles, and it's like, okay, I get it. This was funny when Family Guy tried it 15 years ago, but it's not that funny now. Um, and it also feels like these replays are rubbing salt in the wound. You know, Father Bryce really came around in the end. And again, it reminds me of the, explosive deaths of Jennifer Tilly and of David. And we find out from a flashback to another confession scene. Like I said, there have been these confession scenes. Father Bryce told Dr. Mixter to get out during her confession. Father Bryce has Sister Catherine be in what would normally be his role. That he mentions it's unorthodox. He mentions how he always wanted to be a priest, but that he also felt different from everyone else. And even though he doesn't outright say it, the intention here is that he is gay. Like, Father Bryce is gay. And so that explains, when he saw Devin and Jake kiss, like there was some, maybe like he feels like he wishes that he could have lived a life as a gay man without any, um, like he wishes that he could have been himself. And so he judges others who, tried to be themselves even though it's considered sinful. And he admits, like, the way that his life turned out, he ended up becoming judgmental of others. And yeah, it kind of reminds me of an episode of The Middle where one of the characters who is gay, even though he doesn't say it out loud, there's an episode where he's about to admit to his friend that he is gay, and then his friend is like, "I know," and then they hug it out, and it's a really heartwarming moment. So it's interesting the way that they handle it here as well, where I guess you don't need to outright say it, but it's very clear. So I do like that the audience is trusted here, as opposed to the moment where Bryce explodes and Nika is like, "What happened? I'm blindfolded. I cannot see." Like, of course, we know she's blindfolded and cannot see. All you have to do is have her say what happened, and we already know the rest of the context. But yeah, it also continues to rub salt in the wound of Father Bryce's death. Here's another gay character, and it just gets killed off. But I guess it would be even worse if he was the only gay character. We still have Jake and Devin. So, I don't know. Maybe this, because there are more than one, the decision was that, it's fine to have these casualties as long as it's clear that it's not just the gay characters who are dying, you know? So it's, I don't know, it's a thought exercise to think about. But yeah, I do feel kind of bad about Father Bryce being gone. You know, he was a jerk, but we saw a bit more humanity in him before the end. But it doesn't feel as bad as the deaths of Nadine, Gary, or Jennifer Tilly, or David, like I mentioned. You know, he did his part and he died a hero. You know, he probably knew the risks going in. Um, oh, for his penance, you know, during the confession when he asks Sister Catherine, "What is my penance?" she says, "Nothing. You've punished yourself enough all your life." I do kind of wonder if someone could watch this episode and think that maybe because he didn't uh, do some additional penance, maybe that's why he ended up dying. But I don't know. Anyway, he's dead. Um, and the Chucky soul that was in Nika is now in the doll. Sister Ruth shows up. She had pointed a gun at Lexi, you know, gone to Lexi's room and pointed a gun at her and dragged her here. Jake has been, you know, picked up the Chucky doll, tried drowning his face in holy water, you know, this thing that has holy water in it. It looks like it's burning him, like it's actually working on Chucky because of how evil he is. But Sister Ruth, you know, she has Lexi captive, so she has leverage. But then Glenda has the knife, the Charles Lee Ray knife, it even has his initials on it. Uh, Glenda throws a knife into Sister Ruth's eyes, or one of her eyes actually, and ends her. And it's like, thank goodness this whole gag of Sister Ruth believing Chucky's a savior didn't drag out too much longer. Like, about time they end that joke. And Nika even makes a comment later that up until the end she wasn't sure whose side Glenda was on. So Dr. Mixter ends up grabbing the doll and trying to run off with it. And then the rest end up chasing her. Uh, the doll gets shot in the mouth. I think it's Andy who does this, right? It's Andy and or Kyle. I think they do the shooting. Um, Dr. Mixter drops the doll, and you know, because the doll got shot in the mouth, can't really say anything, and you know, just gets shot all over the place and in the head, I think, until it falls dead. And so after this, Andy and Kyle have a moment where, you know, during one of the confession scenes, Andy had mentioned he's been scared all his life, and he admits that the thought of Chucky finally going away terrifies him because after that he won't know what to do. But now Chucky is gone, and uh, Andy asks Kyle, you know, what are we gonna do? And Kyle's like, the good thing is you have the rest of your life to figure that out. And so, wow, that just really hit me that now that Chucky's gone, or seemingly, um, Andy doesn't need to worry about dying, like getting killed. So he has a lot of time to think about what he wants from his life. You know, he's 40 at this point, and yeah, he's got a few more decades left in him, one would think. And they do this very touching moment in the editing where, uh, as they walk out of the building, we get a flashback to the ending of Child's Play 2, where we see the shot of Kid Andy and Teen Kyle walking out of the toy warehouse, and then the faraway shot where we hear Andy say, "Oh, where's home?" And Kyle's like, "I have no idea, Andy." And it's the music, it's just such an emotional moment here. It just, I don't know, it kind of got to me. So yeah, they're out of the picture. They have their happy lives to look forward to, presumably. And, way to give them a win, Nika and Glenda are conversing and sort of asking each other, like, what are you going to do now? And they don't seem too sure either. But then Tiffany and Glenn arrive in their car. And because Glenn has been wanting to reunite with Glenda, at one point, I think Tiffany was like, can't you think of anything other than yourself? Which is kind of funny because Glenn and Glenda are one and the same person. But Nika has a gun. I assume this might be Sister Ruth's gun. Maybe Nika grabbed it along the way. Points at Tiffany. Tiffany begs for her life, saying that her kids need her. But then Nika, and also Tiffany is told that Chucky's dead. But yeah, Tiffany is almost shot, but Glenn jumps in front of her and gets shot. So Nika, sitting in her wheelchair, is in shock and like saying like no, because like she shot the wrong person. I don't get why she didn't continue to try shooting at Tiffany. Maybe it's because Glenda and Glenn got in the way. I don't know, but there wasn't just one bullet in that gun, right? But the family gets in the car and drives off, and Nika's like, no. So, yeah, it seems like she's in shock and whatnot. But anyway, we get this reveal. We get this flashback. I think during the running, Dr. Mixter holding the Chucky doll, I think we got a quick flash to that shot in Chucky season 1 where teen Chucky has a crossfade moment with the doll. I thought that was a cool shot. But yeah, we get a flashback that reveals, Dr. Mixter is driving away, and while she was running with the Chucky doll, Chucky said the spell that allowed him to switch places with Dr. Mixter. So the doll that was shot actually had Dr. Mixter's soul in it. And I kind of wondered if maybe they made the doll move kind of like Dr. Mixter. I kind of wondered if there was intentional stuff going on there or if I was sort of imagining it. But yeah, Chucky's soul is actually in Dr. Mixter's body and, laughing, and it's end credits. So when I originally watched this, I knew that, okay, there's one more episode in this season, so there has to be a catch, right? Chucky isn't really gone, and lo and behold, here's what happens. And I mean, the show is called Chucky, after all. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much everything in the episode. Trying to remember if there was anything else I may have neglected to mention. Okay, yeah, the Nadine ghost moment was apparently from Lexi overdosing. Yeah, I think I pretty much covered all of it. I mentioned the things that frustrated me, with the Jennifer Tilly stuff, primarily, I guess. And, just moments where characters could have taken a bit more action. But I am glad that Jake finally realizes that he shouldn't have trusted good Chucky all this time. But it was a stupid decision in the first place to have him genuinely believe that Chucky is good rather than being cautious and anxious for his life through it all and second guessing. I was kind of wondering if maybe the intention of the good Chucky story thread is that maybe the message is don't forgive and forget, because it could bite you in the it could bite you back or something. Like it's not that simple. Like just forgiving what someone did and forgetting what they did doesn't make everything okay. Like, I don't know, maybe there was that message that could have been intended, but it was, even if it was a really frustrating story thread to follow. But anyway, I thought this episode, despite its setbacks I've mentioned, had some really exciting stuff in it. And, I've been really down on this setting, this school, but I think all things considered, it really brought some things together for this climactic moment in this penultimate episode of the season. So, a gut feeling is I'm going to rate this 8.25 out of 10. So that's sure to bring up the overall average score of this season. I guess we'll see how I rate the finale. I do remember there are some interesting things in the season finale. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for Going to the Chapel. Tomorrow I'll talk about the season finale, which is appropriately titled Chucky Actually, given that it's set around Christmas time. So thanks for tuning in to Chucktober here on Steven Shinder Reviews in video form, and see you all soon.